Hi, I'm Hannah, and in this lightning talk I will present part of the draft of the chapter I'm writing for the book project Frameworks about the intersection between electronic literature and digital humanities. Within the field of electronic literature, there are numerous databases of varying scopes and sizes, eagerly implementing documentation practices to preserve electronic literature from disappearing due to technological obsolescence. Each of these have different approaches to works, leading to differences in taxonomy, navigation, and options for users. They function as main outcomes of the research projects, as well as an ongoing development. Literary studies has a long history of developing theories and methodologies around reading and understanding texts. But how can we make use of this research when reading databases? Digital hermeneutics can help us. Although we often have the end goal to either pick individual case studies or to do a quantitative analysis, we should not overlook all the ways in which we read and interpret public databases. This can be contextual, for example when we compare records on the same work in different databases. Or distant, we let a computer count, but we also look at the size of list and the number of tags and draw conclusions from that. We browse and click hyperlinks to go through the database before we have a specific goal, so-called hyperreading. And finally, we close read the descriptions and other textual elements in the records. When we write about databases, this is often some sort of project report by the research group or an email. I want to use your database, can you make or fix X? Can we review databases as scholarly output? We review other scholarly writing, and I want to expand this practice to public databases. After all, they are also the result of research and they have a readership in themselves. So what should database criticism address? Data and scope is probably the most obvious point. Learning from critical data studies, a database review should not fall into the trap of bigger is better, but identify the objectives and means of the database and think along with those in the review. Questions to ask are: which data is gathered and how? Which implications are made about the research potential of the data? And are there discrepancies between the two? So that's the data, but there's more to a database. Presentation is an integral part of the perception and use of the database, and aesthetics is far from innocent or trivial, as it draws on assumptions of abilities and experiences of the audience. We can ask, what is the role of interface design in terms of visual pleasure? How does the interface design persuade and shape arguments about the data? And how does the design take into account users with disabilities? In addition to aesthetics, another key element is the browsing experience. Going through a collection and selecting relevant ones is not simply preparatory work, but gives you the pleasure of anticipation. Questions to ask are: what ideologies come across from browsing through the works? Which options does the user have to make selections of works? How does the database encourage or discourage the pleasure of anticipation? Finally, most databases come to fruition within a network. And how do we review something that is the process and product of many individuals? To do so, we need to address the presence and presentation of labor. Questions that need to be addressed here are: how is the labor organized? Which parts of the labor are foregrounded in the presentation? How is labor acknowledged and represented? It is in the interest of the quality and esteem of public databases to develop ways to study and evaluate databases by considering their particular structures, in this case in the field of electronic literature. The practice of building, editing, and reading public databases has to be regarded within the bounds of open access scholarship in themselves, as they are integral parts of the process and result of research projects. To conclude my talk then, I note that the value of criticism is tied to the essence of the database, and we have the opportunity to highlight all the elements that we wish to be part of the field going forward. Thank you for your time, and if you would like to get in touch, you can always email me or send me a message on Twitter.